Hello everyone and welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 87. I'm your host, The Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
I'm feeling bad. You know,
Oh, he's
all,
feeling
all
bad.
these all these years, it's been years actually, that we've been doing the podcast. I've always said that I've been good, right?
Yeah, it's like it never
And
changes.
today, and today, I'm feeling bad, you know?
That is that.
Because
That's not good.
no, it's not good. And do you know why?
I have no idea.
I didn't tell Don this before the show, but essentially, after all this time and after all this shit talking that I've been giving the Rise of Skywalker, how I'm not gonna see it. I was roped into watching it. I'm watching it tomorrow, reluctantly, because all my cousins, they all just like decided to go watch it, and they're like, "Oh, come, yeah, we're gonna be in your area anyways. Just come." So I feel bad because if I don't go and watch it, it's gonna look really bad. It's like, oh well, I'm not hanging out with the family because I don't want to watch this movie. So I've unfortunately been roped into watching the last Skywalker, the Rise of Skywalker. You see all these names I
The
can't even
funny
like.
part of it is we're at a time where we really dread to see a Star Wars film. I do remember before, like, even before, like when Disney bought Star Wars, and they'll be like, oh, The Force Awakens. It was like it had this magical feeling about it. Like, this is something new, this is something different. Hopefully, like, it does something really interesting, and it really didn't succeed onto that point. And I feel like now we're at the point where it's like, oh man, we gotta watch this, and I feel the same way because my friends wanted me to see it tomorrow as well, and it's like
Oh,
I'm basically gonna be forced into watching this film. I at least wanted to wait 1 week, at least 1 week, before before actually doing this, but apparently, people still like their Star Wars, and I think Disney really counted on these people to sucker people in to watch a film straight away.
look, to anyone who's been watching us long enough and hearing us complain about this movie, don't look down on us too much. It's not like we're watching this for free. We're not Disney shills just yet. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
because if
mean,
it was, oh, this movie is the best ever,
yeah, I
like,
love China.
yeah,
All
I
that
love
kind of.
China changing everything up, appealing to our masters, the general.
But look, I don't want to bring the mood down because obviously Star Wars is going to be shit. We'll talk about Star Wars later, but the first thing I guess we'll talk about
It's some positive
is
things.
some positive things because recently, this week, we had the VGAs, the Video Game Awards, which obviously awards in general. Like if you've listened to me before about like and my opinions about awards, I usually feel like it's a bunch of like industry people giving other industry people a bunch of high fives and pats on the backs, and it's not really a consumer thing, although I know there are some instances in award shows where they do give consumers the ability to uh, vote for awards, but those can also be manipulated as well. So I'm very it's like that Obama meme, right? It's like
Thanks,
Obama giving
Obama.
himself a medal, right? Like that's
Oh
what I
yeah,
kind
that
of
one.
feel like. Yeah, like that's how I kind of feel like with award shows. But this time around, I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised about some of the winners for the VGAs. Did you actually watch any of the show live?
Yeah, I watched it during work, so I just put it in the
Okay.
background, and it was during lunchtime, so I got to watch some of the reveals.
Mhm.
And use of it,
Did you
yeah.
did you see? So how did you feel? 'Cause I didn't watch it live. I kind of saw. I think I did what a lot of people did was just watch the cringe supercut
Oh
version
yeah,
of it,
yeah, I love those.
which are always excellent because you know that there's gonna be a cringe supercut because it's the VGA awards, and the people who do it's like a combination of like you have a bunch of people who are the marketing team and you have a bunch of awkward nerds and nobody knows what they're really doing or if they really should be here. And it kind of results in some classic moments like Elon Musk standing up to I don't know what he was clapping,
No,
but
no, he
like
was.
everyone else.
I know exactly why, because I'm a little
Okay.
bit goss in this. I don't know if he's still dating, but the girl performing,
Mm.
her name's Grimes. I really like her music. It's kind of like this electronic dance type of, but kind of creepy music. Um, he's dating her. And she was
Hmm.
performing at the VGAs, and so like he was like the only person sort of like clapping, so he was like randomly standing up, giving her like his own
I
girlfriend
think
an
I think the
ovation.
I think the problem was that like
Also,
when I saw
yeah,
it,
yeah,
it kind of seemed like, oh, he was just clapping for her performance, but then there was a camera on him, and it was almost like they were trying to force him to stand up, and because he did, but then no one else followed suit. Also, I think he was sitting next to
our
the
favorite
Japanese.
waifu. Yeah.
Yeah, the one who I forget what game she
It
did.
she basically works for Tango Gameworks, who did the Evil Within games. She's the art
Oh
director.
yeah,
So I'm like, yeah, she does that. And I think
yeah. She was like the
and
eccentric
yeah, and then yeah, she was
game
just really
developer.
funny,
Yeah.
and yeah, she was just really cool to have like a personality like that at the games.
Yeah, because either
Industry.
everybody seems like really, because you either get like people who either seem genuine, or you have people who just seem like they're reading off a script, which obviously a lot of them
Which we
are
did have
obviously.
with Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez.
Oh yeah, I did love when Vin Diesel was like, "Yo, these gamers, my people,"
I'm like, wait,
and
what?
Rodriguez said Tekken really weirdly, like Taken or something. I'm like, oh man, like I don't know, maybe that's how they legitimately think it was. So so do you know some of the winners? Because I was actually going to test you to see whether you could guess some of the winners. But if you know the winners, then this game we can't play.
Well, I
Uh,
think I know I remember some of them. Um,
okay.
I
Okay. Well, we'll start off with we'll start off with the big one.
mhm.
Uh, do you know which
Yes,
one
yes,
game
I
of
do.
the year?
It was the Seiko game or Sekiro.
Sekiro.
The
Shattered Die Twice. That's correct.
yes,
From Software.
yes. So, but yeah,
I
because
think.
because that's the thing. I think I've kind of said that. I like the Dark Souls series, but I haven't really played them in a sense of like really committed to them. I played the
Mhm.
original one, which is Demon Souls. And all the other ones I kind of had dabbled a bit into it, but I've never had the time to really like delve into a whole Souls type game, I guess. But I've
Mhm.
heard this one is a little bit more accessible, and yeah, I've heard it's really great. So, you know,
Yeah,
props to
look,
it.
personally from the list, I was very satisfied about this game getting Game of the Year. I haven't played it yet. It is on my list, more so than Dark Souls, really. But this game seems really cool. Um, I'm just glad that Death Stranding didn't win,
Yeah, everyone
just
had a lot of
because.
beef with that because, like, yeah, for some reason Kojima got voted in a lot of votes, and that had
Well,
something
yeah,
with
and I
Jeff.
think because I think one of the hosts of the video game awards was in Death Stranding as like a NPC, so people were thinking, might have some shiftiness. Other runner-ups who were nominated were Control. I haven't played it, but
It's
it
Remedy
seemed
games, so
okay.
Alan
Yeah.
Wake and Quantum Break and all that, all those third person games. I really love all their games, so I'm glad that they've at least got a foothold.
Death Stranding, as I mentioned, the Resident Evil 2 remake.
I've heard that's really good. Need to play that
Yeah, I
still.
heard that was really good too. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate,
Yeah, cool.
which is really good. I think personally, I think that would like I've only played that game and the other nominee, which is the Outer World, and I think Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a much better game. I just kind of got bored of Outer Worlds eventually. Like I just kind of like blasted through it. It doesn't have the charm of something like for. I feel like this year. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Like
Mm-hmm.
in just like me kind of thinking, there didn't seem like a lot of spectacular games because I
Yeah,
don't think like Resident like as much as like Resident Evil 2 was taken well. Um, I don't know if I would consider it a game of the year if it was released last year or even the year before. And same thing with The Outer Worlds. And I don't know, like same thing with Control. Like Control looks like a really interesting game. There's a
but
lot of
like
like,
game of the year,
really,
yeah, I
yeah,
understand,
you know what I mean?
and I think we've talked about this before. It's kind of like I feel like a lot of the studios, like the big ones, like I don't know, your Naughty Dogs or the all those types of ones, they are waiting for the next gen stuff to come out.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like this is kind of like the end of the cycle kind of thing because like even like Nintendo, they don't have Mario Odyssey coming out this year or Breath of the Wild coming out this year, like those types of caliber games. One
Yeah,
game that
definitely.
one game that did get shafted, and I think it's well known, is actually Gears of War 5. That's well received
Okay.
by all the critics. Really great story. It's probably one of the best Gears games, if not like it's pretty much has every Gears thing that you ever want in one big package. Did get nominated for best game, and everyone's a little bit pissed off. There's a few people who are pissed off about that, and it's kind of gone by the waistline type of thing, because it's kind of like, yeah, Xbox, you know, like representation when it comes to an exclusive, and it's not there, but it's like Gears 5 was really amazing.
Yeah, I think on the list it got nominated for best audio design. Now, do you remember who won the best audio design?
That is the most randomest thing.
All right, well,
Give,
I'm
give,
gonna
give,
give
wait,
you.
wait, give, yeah,
I'm
give me the nominees.
okay. So the nominees are Control, Death Stranding. Oh, what a surprise! Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Gears 5, Resident Evil 2, and Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
I think I remember this because I was during lunchtime. It's Call of Duty, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I do remember that because I'm just like, okay then.
You see, I can't get you on any of these gotchas because I would never have guessed Call of Duty.
Well, that's the I was surprised as well because like, if it was them against DICE, because DICE do the Battlefield games, they're usually really good with their sound design. But I'm assuming with the new Call of Duty, like, the sound design really is all about like, yeah, the gun's sound and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, I was surprised with that. I guess, you know.
All right,
There's one I already know. Best fighting game was Super Smash, because I remember that being like, haha, that's funny. Smash being a fighting game.
Looking at, I even looked at the other, kind of like things in the category. Jump Force? What? Jump Force?
Yeah, I know. I played that game because I got Game Pass on my Xbox.
Yeah.
And I played it for about maybe 2 hours, and I'm like, oh man, this fighting game, like the actual mechanics of the fighting is atrocious, and it's just like it feels very like 6 out of 10 type of game. So I don't know why it was nominated, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean to be honest, I think like Smash Brothers, like that game went above and beyond. You know, with everything, like they brought everyone back. You know, a lot of people were like, oh, we don't know if the story's going to be good because, you know, we couldn't make it like this super huge thing, but then it ended up still being like a really big thing, and it was really fun. Mortal Kombat was another title which I probably would have maybe given it if it wasn't Smash Brothers. Samurai Showdown I haven't played, but that's obviously a remake of, or like I guess a.
And it was it's a older series, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also Dead or Alive 6. I played Dead or Alive 3 on the old Xbox, the very first Xbox. That was one of my first games that I got for the console.
I think that was a lot of people's first game. Even on the Xbox 360, I played like Dead or Alive like 4. I remember that was like my thing for a while.
Well, you see, my problem is I think like back then when I bought my Xbox, I bought it on a whim, right? Because my uncle said, "Oh, I'll buy you like a console, anything you want." I'm like, "Oh, sweet." And being a dumb little kid, I was like, you know, originally I wanted a GameCube, but then the guy at the store convinced me to buy an Xbox. And then, but I think like I needed to be convinced, and I was like, I don't know if I want this game. And I think the game was Halo, right?
Yeah.
And I had no idea what Halo was.
Yeah, I don't think many people did.
I was like, I don't want fucking Halo.
What the
Right?
fuck?
And I was like, oh,
what kind of name is Halo?
And the game that I ended up getting was Star Wars Obi-Wan. And Dead or Alive 3. Those were the two games that I got. And I fucking loved Dead or Alive 3. I played the shit out of that game. Star Wars Obi-Wan I had to come back to like a couple of years later because I was like a stupid kid and I didn't know how to play games properly.
Do you remember Do you remember the Dead or Alive movie? Have you ever watched it?
I know of it, but I haven't watched it.
Oh, you should watch it. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine. We should have a drunk watch.
Well, I mean, we're supposed to have a drunk watch of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, that as well. It's always the fighting games. The fighting games are just the worst. So like we'll have a back-to-back feature.
Yeah, well, that and the fighting games are the only ones that get a movie since in the old like days because you just have you already have like the storyline set. Oh, X and Y fight, and you know, and Z and Alpha fight. Like, you know, these characters fight, and they all fight to get something. That's the reason. And then you have the movie already made. You don't have to spend money on anything else. You just have to put people in cosplay costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Best role-playing game: Final Fantasy XIV, Kingdom Hearts 3, Disco Elysium, Monster Hunter World Iceborne, or The Outer Wilds.
I have no idea with this one. I'm gonna say Outer Wilds for that one.
Disco Elysium. Now, Disco Elysium, I think, is like an indie-ish game.
I'm assuming it's indie because I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, I heard of it, but I didn't hear like, oh, like, is it some kind of like what kind of game is this? I don't
Did
know.
they dance?
Yeah, no, I think it's like I think it's like a strategy game, right? Like almost like a role playing strategy game, but it's like a point and click.
Oh yeah, so it's
Um,
kind of like a Diablo type.
I think so, maybe. But again, I haven't played, so don't don't call me now. Actually, this is going to be a pretty good one. You have to now guess the fresh indie game presented by Subway. I heard that the Video
Presented
Gaming
by
Award.
Subway.
Yes,
I do remember hearing
that's
the presented by
exactly what it
Subway
says.
when those awards came out. I'm like, okay, I know you need money to rent out this place, but okay then.
Yeah, so you have so I think it's recognizing independent studios that released its first game in 2019. So I'm going to be saying the game and not the studio, because otherwise you'd have no idea like who is this. There's a
Yeah,
game called Gris. I don't know if you've heard about that
yeah,
one.
yeah. That's the one with the really cool art with the girl. But I don't know
Yeah,
anything
that's
about
correct.
that game.
Yeah, for my friend Pedro. So this one is kind of like this side-scrolling like Matrix game where like you're kind of like jumping around and you got like two guns and you're shooting. So it's like puzzles. It's like shooting. Yeah, it's a really cool
Yeah, sounds
game.
good.
Disco Elysium that I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier. The Outer Wilds. Now the Outer Wilds is different
Yeah,
from
the
the
Outer
Outer
Worlds. I
Worlds.
do know that. I feel so bad. It's kind of like what's that Blizzard game with the
Which
cards?
one?
It's
Oh, Hearthstone.
Hearthstone and there's another game called like the Hearthstone or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I do
God.
remember that was a whole thing.
Yikes. That sucks. But yeah, there's the Outer Wilds. Now that game seems interesting, but I don't think I'd actually like
Hmm.
buy it. It's like you basically are like some kind of astronaut, but the universe blows up in like 14 minutes or something. So you have to kind of do. You don't know that until you kind of play the game a few times. Like, oh, all of a sudden I'm dead. But you kind of as you explore, you find out.
Hmm.
There's Slays Aspire, and Untitled Goose Game.
Yeah,
What do you think
I know
won
Untitled's good game
Subway's
is really
fresh
yeah.
indie?
I knew everyone loves Untitled Goose Game, but like I'm assuming since Disco Elysium won best role play, it's kind of like the best director and best movie in the Oscars. It kind of goes hand
Mhm.
in hand. So I would assume Disco Elysium would win that award too, because it's like the same people like voting. Yeah,
That's correct. It did win.
yeah.
Fresh indie game presented uh, by Subway. Yes, I almost forgot
Man,
our
we've
sponsors.
said it multiple times. Let's get some sponsorships going on.
There is a separate category for independent game. So
But
there's
wait,
one
what's the
for
difference? Independent game
one for outstanding creative and technical achievements in a game made outside the traditional publisher system. So I think
what?
with the Subway, yeah. So with the okay, so here's a distinction. So the first one that I mentioned referred to indie game studios that first released an indie game this year,
Okay.
whereas these other titles, some of them are previous. Like for
They're still
example,
smaller studios. They just released like a second game, for example.
yeah, yeah. For example, Devolver Studio, they released Katana Zero. It's like a cool, like, side, Metrovania, like katana killing person game. Pretty cool. Disco Elysium, by the way, also won. So let's not focus too much on
Disco
that. But I
Elysium
just wanted to.
wins all the indie games.
But this is the last one that I'll ask you about. So, best family game. So we have
I do.
Ring
Okay,
Fit.
first of all, before you name any of it, I do remember basically on the awards that like literally Nintendo is like all the awards for this one.
Oh, yes, that's exactly. I was gonna ask you if you knew what the pattern was with all these games, but yes,
Yeah.
they were all Nintendo games: Ring Fit Adventure, Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Yoshi's Crafted World.
And best
Um,
family
d
game.
yeah, what do you think won the best family game?
Okay, family game. Family game.
I can repeat them to you
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want.
yeah.
So it's Ring Fit Adventure, Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Yoshi's Crafted World.
Hmm. Trying to think. It's like I have no clue about the ring one because I doubt that one. I'm trying to think. I'm assuming because if Smash won, best fighting. I'm assuming they just wouldn't get Smash to get all of them. So I'm gonna say, I don't know, Mario Maker seems more of like a family game, so I'm gonna say like Mario Maker 2.
Ooh, unfortunately, the winner is Luigi's Mansion 3, which seems really weird because you think that, like, it'd be like a spooky game, but I guess, like,
Either way,
obviously
Nintendo
it's like,
wins. So
Nintendo does win. Yeah, it's like, again, it's like, which game does Nintendo win? But yeah, Luigi's Mansion 3, which I found pretty interesting. Again, some of the other stuff are just
yeah, some of the
like,
other stuff I do remember I remember there was a shock that Apex Legend won best multiplayer game. Like
that's correct.
I was like, okay then, like that came out of nowhere. Do people still play Apex? I don't know, but okay then.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's one of those things where clearly they they had at least some kind of movement to make that come up in the award. I mean Fortnite I think also won some kind of award as well. It won
Probably like the most like impactful game in the world or something like that.
yeah, something like best ongoing game, shit like.
Uh-huh.
But and there's all these other kinds of about I don't know. Who's the best esport person? Shut
Yeah,
up.
I had no idea who any of those people were except from Shroud. I'm like,
He's
I know.
Shroud. Yeah.
I'm
What
like,
about Ninja?
I'm like,
Do
I
you
know
Ninja?
Shroud, sort of.
What about Ninja? Do you know
Yeah,
Ninja?
I know Ninja, I know Shroud, and there was a meme of like how Ninja walked up on the podium and had his shoulders hunched, and then Reiji Fils-Aimé, the guy from like Nintendo, had his like swag strut, and everyone's like the Chad guy versus the Virgin. Yeah, that was funny.
I mean, Reggie is a Chad. I'll give you that much. My body is ready. And you know what? We also, despite the fact that the Video Games Awards, they did kind of come off as, it seemed like one big ad, right?
More or less. I feel like because I think they rent out the Nokia Theater, or American say would Nokia Theater, which is in Los Angeles, and I'm assuming that costs quite a bit of money, and they just when they fly people in and all that type of stuff, I'm assuming it costs quite a bit of money. So because I do remember this used to be on Spike TV before that was dissolved, like years ago. So like this is probably about 10 years ago or so. So this was like before you couldn't stream it anywhere, and it was like very hard to actually watch. But now it's kind of everywhere, obviously. So I'm assuming they just needed their sponsors, and which they did have. They had a lot of like commercial breaks, and they had all these type of stuff, and all the commercials were kind of game related, which was kind of cool.
You see, usually I wouldn't mind if like there is like the odd plug here and there, but they even did the whole, on the ad break where announcing the winners for awards, like typical like Oscars and all that do. Like for all these like little people who nobody cares about, we'll give them an award just so we can pat ourselves on the back, but we won't actually premiere it live at all. So I think it's one of those things that just so we can fit in more ads. This is the main reason why. But some of the news that we and announcements that we got from the Game Awards included one of your favorites, No More Heroes 3, The Return.
Yes.
You must be excited for all the stuff that's coming out regarding it.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was pretty much one of the very first reveals in the awards. And yeah, it started with like a fake trailer. It had this like it had a really cool anime art style. It's hard to explain, but it's like I don't know if you remember like have you watched Summer Wars? No.
Summer Wars, no.
Yeah, okay. It's an anime. It's an anime movie. Who was one of the directors of the Digimon movie that came out, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this really cool art style where this guy, like this little kid, finds like an alien and he takes care of it. And he says, it's basically E.T. He's like, oh, I'll come, like when I go back home later on in a few years, I'll come back. And he comes back, and then he basically becomes an evil alien. He's like, yeah, well, I'm going to destroy all of Earth. And it's like this trailer that goes on for like 4 minutes, and it has this like really cool like art style. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, for the last 10 seconds, it's just literally Travis Touchdown from No More Heroes being like, okay, I'm the real hero of this story, and then just like cuts. So it's like this fake out trailer, and it's very Suda 51, which he's based, his design style is very he calls himself a punk, so he did like Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, and obviously the No More Heroes series. So he's a very weird like person. So he's basically like Kojima if he got more bigger in the spotlight, more or less. And yeah, No More Heroes is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I've cosplayed Travis Touchdown, and the whole premise of the story is, in this kind of world, there's like this League of Assassins, and there's all these rankings, and if you're number one on the leaderboard, you get all these prizes, etc., etc. And in the first game, the whole point of him to be like, I want to become the number one assassin because this girl said she'll sleep with me if I become number one. So he just starts killing all these weird and unique assassins. So there's like a cowboy, there's like a girl with a baseball bat, and they all have their own weird, unique quirks to them. So 1 and 2 came out. There was a spin-off on the Switch recently, but that wasn't like a true sequel. So we finally get a true sequel, and it looks really great as far as I know. There's like literally 10 seconds of gameplay, but I'm already down for it. So I'm excited that this is happening, and someone's giving Suda51 some extra work. And maybe one day we'll get Lollipop Chainsaw 2, because I like that game as well. So I'm pretty happy that got announced.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the obviously, as you mentioned, like the kind of anime art style. I wonder what studio created it, because it does harken back to like some kind of, some of the older styled like anime shows or movies that kind of came out. Like, it has this kind of, when I say dated, I don't mean it in a bad way, but I mean just in the style that they had. And then at the end of the trailer, you obviously see Travis and giving an homage to Akira as well. So it's all very cool. A lot of kind of references and stuff to that. So there was that. They had some trailers for Final Fantasy VII. One of the big world premieres was about Xbox Series X.
You gotta get used to that name.
Yeah, well, the thing is, my prediction is that it's not going to be called Xbox Series X, and I think this is also kind of confirmed by other people, just like rumors and stuff, that they're just calling it Xbox, and that it's called Xbox because they're going to be trying to unify the whole Xbox and Microsoft branding into a service, right? Much like Steam, right? But in order to kind of make it easier to be like, oh, I'm playing, I'm playing Xbox, or I'm playing this service, or I'm using Netflix, like that's essentially what it's going to go into, which is a bit of a shame because, the thing with like that Sony kind of has the advantage on is like they're just going to stick a number there and just be like, oh, yep, it's the PlayStation 5, that's it. And when you want to play the PlayStation Online, it's like, well, you're just going to be on Sony's network or the PlayStation network. That's it. Like that's all you need to do. Like Xbox, I don't know who's doing the marketing at Xbox. It seems kind of weird, but apparently it's going to be twice the power of the current iteration of Xboxes. It's going to have like 10 million teraflops and
all the numbers, specs and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. It's like double the teraflops, and it's gonna be it looks pretty. I like the memes about it looking like a fridge. It does kind of look like a fridge.
It looks like, to me, obviously, and I look at the more practical approach, it literally just looks like a compact PC. Like when you get the compact PC case.
I mean, that's the direction all consoles have been going to, right? Like even the PlayStation 4 has a more PC architecture than, especially by comparison to the PlayStation 3. Like that's half the reason why a lot of games like didn't run really well on the PlayStation 3 from that weren't first party, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of first party developers were able to get their games like looking great on the console, but a lot of third party games didn't end up so well. But kind of like Skyrim, for example. Like you could only save a few times, and then like your game starts to corrupt a little bit. So yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, Xbox Series X, it's an announcement. Can't say as a PC gamer I'm too excited, but like obviously if it means that we'll be able to play more Xbox exclusive games on the PC, that's a good thing. I'm okay with that.
As you mentioned before, they're very much turning this into like a service type of thing, and obviously I think they fully committed to this when they announced the Master Chief Collection on the PC last year. I feel like obviously that was a big deal. Or was this year? I'm not quite sure, but I do remember that was a big deal.
I think this year, but I think like early this year.
Yeah.
You see, my concern is that the whole reason why Xbox has to go into this direction is because they fucked up initially back in 2013 or whatever. With
But
the
I,
whole
but I
like,
feel like obviously, that's the thing. I feel like obviously every single generation of consoles you can always recover, but I feel like maybe they did this in such a way where they're just kind of like, in the end, it's better revenue for us. Like as we were
well,
mentioning, as you were mentioning before, like nowadays, you're when it comes to the gaming stuff, you have better output or you have a better way of making revenue when you put certain things out there that give you that revenue. So it could be a service thing, or like you can even see it in games, because before it used to be like, oh well, you play a multiplayer game and you need to buy the map packs, and now everyone's like, what the hell, that's stupid, and that splits the player base. So now maps are always free, but it's always the in-game stuff that you have to buy, and
yeah,
that's a better revenue stream. So I'm assuming some person in Microsoft out there in the Xbox division was like doing the math, and they're just probably like, if we put on PC stuff and if we have this type of architecture where it's more of like a streaming platform / service, we'll get more hits and we'll get more money than rather than just doing the traditional route of just doing consoles and doing the same thing. Because even from what I know from the Xbox, the Series X, it's going to use the exact same controllers. You can use the exact same controllers as Xbox One. Everything's kind of compatible from Xbox 360, One, and even the original Xbox games. It's basically just Xbox the service now. And that's what they've kind of streamed into,
Well, but here's the problem, right? Like, if Xbox could, they would have their own independent ecosystem, much like Sony. They've kind of gone towards a more consumer-friendly direction because they don't have the majority of people playing their consoles. Like you've seen it with the fact that Sony has been the only one as of recent not kind of complying with cross-play until recently. I think they're complying with cross-play now with certain games. I think, for example, Destiny, I think obviously has cross-play between everything. That is also something from a game developer side too. But I remember initially there was like the talks for trying to have I forget what the game is called, but the one with
Are you sure it's not Fortnite?
No, the cars playing soccer.
Oh yeah,
I forget what it's called, but very, very Rocket League.
Yeah, Rocket League.
Now, yeah, so Rocket League, for example, they tried to. They even said like, hey, like PC they're down, Xbox is down, even the Switch was down. But the only people who went for it or weren't open to do it was PlayStation 4. So it seems, PlayStation slash Sony. So it seems like going down this consumer-friendly approach, being like, oh, hey, play our games on this and play our games on that. Like eventually getting it towards to a point where people play these games as a service or consume video games as a service is the direction they want to go in. Maybe like I'll pay $14 a month and have access to all the games in our portfolio. It's whether or not it's a viable one, because again we're already seeing the kind of problem with bloat and the lack of good quality content on platforms such as Netflix and Disney and stuff, like Disney Plus and all that. So my thinking is that if they could have their own kind of isolated ecosystem like Nintendo and Sony had, with like good quality games and a lot of exclusives. That's the main thing. Like Xbox has to have good exclusives. It didn't really have that many good exclusives. Like sure, as you mentioned, like Gears 5 got a lot of raving, but the average person who buys an Xbox maybe wouldn't get Gears 5, and that's maybe the reason why it didn't make a lot of impact. That the average person would get Halo, right? Halo is something, a Halo, right? You know what I mean?
Just
like
a Halo.
A Halo, they'd get like a Halo game, but then what else? What else is a big Xbox exclusive game that you can only get on the Xbox? I can't really name that many off the top of my head.
Well, let's think. Are we talking about just like, can you find them on PC as well? Are we playing that game, or are we going to play
we're playing that game. Yes.
Because if you can find it on PC, there's not many, because everything's been ported to PC nowadays. But essentially, Quantum Break from Remedy, who did Control, is good. Sunset Overdrive was a really great
That's
one.
on
That
PC now.
yeah, that's on PC now.
Yeah.
You know, like basically all of them. Like Rise that came early on. I like that game. That was on PC.
Yeah, but would you get an Xbox for Rise? Because there are really good games on the PS4, like God of War. You have the Spider-Man game that came out. There's the one where you're like what is it, like a fighting cyber dinosaurs. You know, the that game. I forget what that's called. But I've heard good ones about that.
What Ark?
No, not Ark.
That's the
Like
only thing I
it.
know with dinosaurs. Oh,
No,
Horizon Zero Dawn. You mean?
that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot of those kind of games on the PlayStation, and then like on the Switch, you got Smash Brothers, you got Luigi's Mansion, you got all the kind of big games that Nintendo, and Nintendo kind of keeps it within their own ecosystem, right? And that's what I'm saying. If Xbox had like 10 exclusive games that they know people were going to come back to the Xbox every time, they'd behave exactly like PlayStation and Switch. But because they're kind of the quote unquote losers this console generation, quote unquote, right? I'm putting losers. They have to go this direction because it's going to be the best way to gain good faith back from the general audience.
Yeah, and that's true. But maybe like, as well on top of this, maybe they are going to do something different in a sense because we always talk about like how, oh man, this is going to be like the last console generation or whatever it may be. And like I feel like a lot of things like what we traditionally had of these 100% we're gonna switch over and transition to one different console to another one. It's kind of now null and void. Where now like the PlayStation 5 will probably be backwards compatible with like the rest of the stuff. Hopefully with the next gen and kind of continue on. And the more and more technology gets more advanced, I feel like it makes more sense to have a streaming service because it may be completely and just have a box that you don't really sell, but you sell the brand name and the service. Because if you think about it, most manufacturers, so whether it be Nintendo, well, minus Nintendo because they have a very strict strategy, but basically Sony and Microsoft, they sell the consoles always at a loss because they always want to get it back from the exclusives that they get. So it would be, I'm assuming the math would be, it'd be cheaper to kind of maybe downplay the actual box itself for the hardware and just sell the service and have all the games and have all the access. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing where Nintendo doesn't beat the same drum as like Microsoft or Sony as well. They do their own thing. So maybe I think Microsoft's kind of like, look, we try to compete in that particular sense. It doesn't work. Let's go our own way. And now at this point, the three main competitors of console gaming all doing three different types of gaming type of stuff, which is probably more better in the end.
Well, yeah, having a diversified revenue stream is the best way to go about things, especially when you're not the top dog at the moment. I mean, Xbox has been pretty successful with their, I think they're on like their Xbox Live features, right? Like that's apparently really popular.
Yeah, Xbox Game Pass is like probably the best deal. Like I've got that right now. Like yeah. I've literally I can literally play Outer Worlds for like literally $10.
$1, right?
Yeah, well I signed up, but it's like, and it's like it's ridiculously cheap. Like I've played so many games over the past like 6 months. I've had it that like I would not have bought, but I've just played them because they're just there, and I feel like it's very much a better thing. Because like if I ask you, hey, would you pay like $15 for 100 and something games per month, and then things get switched in and out, and some of these games haven't been on sales. Like I can play Outer Worlds, Metro Exodus that came out earlier this year. I can play Devil May Cry 5, all for that $15 a month. I feel like a lot of people would be like, yeah, that's a really good deal. So I feel like that's what they're trying to target, and I feel like it could work really. And if they get ahead of it because they have the architecture, because they're Microsoft and they have all this stuff, they can really be ahead of the game. And then at that point, Sony's kind of like, oh, well, we probably want to do it as well, because I feel like that's where they know where the industry's going.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's the reason why I brought Game Pass to begin with. Like, this is the way that Xbox has been competing, and they've been doing well, because a lot of people in the Game Pass, even though by default, like, do you need, because I obviously haven't kept up, but do you need to have Game Pass or whatever it's called in order to play live?
Well, that's online? The thing. They've linked it, so either you can get normal Xbox Live,
Mhm.
And then you can get Game Pass. And then
Okay.
there's a combined thing where it's like Xbox Live and
But
Game Pass together
but
as a
you still have to
package.
pay. But you still have to pay to play online, right?
I think when you pay for Game Pass, it gives you the online function
No,
as
no,
well.
but I mean in general.
I
Like
think
in order to play Xbox Live, do you have to pay money to play
yes,
it?
yes, in general, yeah.
Okay. You see, this is the thing. I'm seeing this. This is going to be my prediction. It's going to move away from that. It's going to be like, oh, you can play whatever game you want for free. Like, obviously, that's going to probably continue for maybe a couple of more years, but eventually, it's going to go the way of PC, where um, playing online, it'll be free, but um, people will just buy the Xbox Pass component in order to gain like additional features. I don't know, emotes, make your own groups or whatever. Like so you can play via your like Xbox
Discord
pool or
server, but
Discord,
yeah,
right?
whatever it may be.
Something. Yeah, that's what it would be. And then obviously you have your online being able to play whatever games at the cheap. And yeah, and I think obviously because Xbox has to go this route, like it's classic competition, right? Like if your competitor is giving you, if you're making burgers and your competitor is giving like a free soda with their burger, the other side has to at least try to offer something to compete with them, to try and be on equal legs. So I can imagine that being the case with Sony because they have been doing a lot with their online stuff because apparently it's not as good or it's not good because it's like an emulation and there's some kind of lag component in regards to trying to play games through that. And also we have the xCloud as well, which is Microsoft's version of essentially Stadia, right? Like playing games remotely
Yeah,
through.
and then that's also like Sony's service of PlayStation Now, which it's still not in Australia, and I feel like obviously Australia we get shafted with all this type of
But I
components.
don't think a lot of people are playing PlayStation now. So I think that's part of the reason. Like it's still kind of in beta, right? Like,
Yeah, like
but
a lot of this is because yeah, the Xbox Cloud stuff is still like it literally just gonna beta like 2 months ago. So it's like I feel like all this stuff will come into fruition. Like initially they'll say like maybe not next E3 because they'll be talking about the consoles, but maybe a year after that when like it's already been like about 6 to 8 months. They'll be like, okay, now this is the full power of whatever we've got for the next gen.
mhm.
And yeah, and that because that's the thing with the Xbox Game Pass, you still have to install the games and make it run. So I feel like obviously they're working all this stuff out where it's like you can just press and play, and that's what kind of Microsoft wanted to do back in 2013 because they were always talking about Crackdown 3 and it uses the cloud to generate more computing power. So then you've got more power technically to play the rest of the games, and they basically just backed away from that because no one wanted an always online game. But look where we are now. But yeah, I feel like that's 100% what's going on. And even then, I'm still excited for the IPs. They announced Hellblade 2. I don't know if you played the first one, but because it's made by Ninja Theory, who made Heavenly Sword, Enslaved, which I like when they first acquired Ninja Theory. I'm just like, make Enslaved 2. That game deserves a sequel if you ever played it. So play Enslaved 2, people. And Hellblade is a really great 8-hour experience of puzzles, some combat, and it's just more of a personal story, and it looks beautiful. And the trailer that just showed for it, and they said it's all in-game engine. Now, obviously, what that means is this is 100% the computing power of what it can do with the game engine that they're running. But obviously, when it comes to gameplay, they're going to scale things back because the way it works is this is at max capacity what this thing can do, and then obviously when you add into different computing functions, whatever it may be, it changes up a few things. So obviously you're going to take it with a grain of salt, but it's always at the end of the generation you see people harnessing the best of their engines and see what they can do. So I feel like that is very much achievable in like a real live action setting, more or less.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the only other kind of games that kind of caught my attention was Bravely Default 2 because I thought that
There
already
was
had a
Bravely
sequel.
Second.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well, right?
Welcome. Once again, made by Square Enix. So Square Enix
Yeah, who knows
naming
how?
gets us again.
Well, but I think technically it means that Bravely Second is the sequel to Bravely Default, whereas Bravely Default 2 is set in a new world, right? I think that's essentially what it's supposed to mean. So I thought that was hey, I mean that's fine. I mean if they want to name it like that, that's cool. I welcome more. I actually still need to play Bravely Second, to be fair, so it's on my list. And then the other game that kind of came out of nowhere was The Wolf Among Us 2. Now,
Yeah.
people have been trying to and asking for a sequel from The Wolf Among Us.
Hey, that was me. That was me in 2016. I went to Comic-Con and Telltale was demoing the Batman game. This is the first kind of like showing of the Batman
which
game.
Which is also coming out with, I think, a collection as well, right? Because there's been 2 Batman games.
Yeah, and they're going to condense into one. I still haven't played them yet, and RIP Telltale.
No, neither.
Yeah,
I've heard good things.
Yeah. I saw it in gameplay. It looked really good. But yeah, I was there, and there was like a Q&A, and I talked to one of the developers, and this was like 2016. I'm just like, I really love The Wolf Among Us. I love where the story goes, and they set it up for a sequel. And I'm like, when are you gonna do it? And at the time, the guys just said it wasn't that big of a success, therefore meaning we couldn't make one. And obviously, they announced The Wolf Among Us 2 like I think the next year. So they must have got some sort of green light, because I'm assuming Telltale must have lost.
No, this is the first time we're hearing about.
No.
Really?
The Wolf Among Us 2 got announced, I think last year at E3, and then obviously there was the news that Telltale was shutting down because they didn't make enough money.
Then they got bought up by
somebody, and then everyone just thought like, oh well, everything must be dead, yeah. And then all of a sudden, this is kind of like a re-announcement, but it's a fully like it's coming back. Because I'm assuming, well, first of all, I'm just really excited for the game because I really love the story, and it's based off the comic books, which I need to read at some point. But yeah, I'm assuming what happened with Telltale and why they shut down is because they had so many licenses, and they didn't really do many original things, or they bought too many high licenses. So like they had Game of Thrones, they had freaking Borderlands, which Tale for the Borderlands is pretty good, and they had the Minecraft story. They had all these different types of things going on at the exact same time. Like obviously the Walking Dead stuff. So I felt like they and obviously they didn't really evolve that much. The engine is the same engine that they use, etc.
Yeah, people have been complaining about that engine like for years, and it's
like very choppy.
Like I mean, look, when you're playing the first, Walking Dead game, it's fine. It's the first game, but by the time there's been like 3 or 4 of those things, and it's still the same engine. Like they literally had another company have to make the last one to kind of close up the story, which I don't think a lot of people kind of liked. And especially when you compare it to like other games that kind of have, a similar kind of, art, like I guess story style.
Because even just recently, I played like Detroit Becoming Human on the PlayStation, and that's like obviously fully in 3D. The models look really, really nice, especially when they scan all the facial stuff in the mocap. And that has all the different branching stories, and it's kind of like an adventure game. And it's kind of like, I mean, obviously it works for different styles. Like obviously Walking Dead, based off the comic book, and it has the same style. It lends itself also to the Borderlands game. But obviously the Game of Thrones one, not so much. There was a Jurassic Park one that no one remembers.
Batman would probably be a good one. But I mean, look, compared to something like Life is Strange, like those kind of games, they have those kind of, you can explore these areas and interact with things and have conversations, but they actually don't look like ass, right? Like, this is the thing. They didn't adapt. They thought they can kind of get away. I mean, some of the games are really good. Like, I haven't played. I've got the game, but I haven't played it. The Borderlands, the Tales from the Borderlands
is really good. Yeah, it keeps the same humor, and it's and obviously the style is exactly the same. So
yeah. But that's like the kind of main highlight that I wanted to kind of.
Hey, what about the Fast and Furious game that looks like it's from the PlayStation 2?
No one cares about that.
The final reveal of the show was Fast and Furious game that no one cares about. Which I want to preface how disappointing this was. Back in 2010, the video game award reveal for the final reveal was literally Skyrim. Like Skyrim, that was the trailer with the wall and the epic music, and everyone was talking about Phosphor Dars. That happened 2010, and now we got freaking Fast and Furious. Everyone was speculating, and I have no idea where all these leaks come from. And it must be someone either joking or trolling, but they always say it's always the new Rocksteady Batman game or DC game. They always say it. It's always going to be revealed, and it never shows up.
You can't trust him. You can't trust.
But I swear to God, they even said at E3, like, oh yeah, Rocksteady's new game's gonna be revealed, I think we were talking before about the DC leaks, and we're not quite sure if these are true, but Rocksteady has to be doing something for like 4 or 5 years.
I don't know about Rocksteady doing anything. I definitely know that WB's internal game studio are definitely making something because they've already made references to the Court of Owls. I'm expecting something like that coming out as an announcement next year for some kind of video game conference or other. I think it just goes to show how much of the industry doesn't kind of need video game award shows in the advent of social media to give people, especially consumers, the new goss on what new game is coming out. We don't need to sit through 10 hours of ads and 10 hours of people talking shit. We can just find out what trailer is coming out by going on Twitter or going on YouTube and seeing
look at the funny moments. You know, like it's like exactly. Making a compilation and feel like It's you can even kind of see the change where it's like, yeah, we just want the information now, and it's like it's not regulated to like you can only find it in this place, and then it won't be there for a while. So it's like it's everywhere pretty much as soon as it kind of gets released. So it feels like it's an old guard, kind of like the Oscars and things like that, where it's like you don't really have to sit by between the 4.5 hours. Someone else is going to update you of like the best winners or whatever it may be. And you can just watch the rest.
I mean. And look, the Oscars and stuff have tried to be more appealing to like the general audience and not the kind of high snobriety kind of individuals by like trying to put in movies like Black Panther and stuff in there. But you know, people can kind of see through all that kind of bullshit. You know. Now, some more positive news, but some positive news regarding Star Wars is
very few of that happening these days.
Yeah. The first is that this is the only good news is that apparently some new job listings at Respawn suggest that they're already working on a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So I'm pretty happy to hear that. I'm still making my way through the game just because I'm trying to play it on the regular difficulty and also trying to balance playing through Breath of the Wild as well.
I've heard it's pretty hard with that stamina bar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing it on the hardest difficulty, like I guess it would be the equivalent of hard, not very hard, right? There's 4. There's like easy mode, regular, and then hard, and then very hard. Mm-hmm. I'm playing it at hard. But yeah, it's really fun. I'm glad to see that it's being successful. And yeah, like I can only hope that they are actually making a sequel to it, because again, like, you know, I guess we're not going to do. I think there's only one more episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, so we'll probably hold out to talk about it later on.
Although I think like everybody's kind of flip-flopping in regards to whether they're liking Mandalorian or not. I've been consistently liking it so far. So, you know, if they kind of invest in, you know, the shows and the video games that actually feel like Star Wars will be very successful. And I think this is the direction that they need to go into, you know, lean more in and have more people who know about the franchise kind of steer the direction of it. But yeah, I guess we'll go into the more quote-unquote negative aspect of Star Wars, right?
Which surrounds every single part of Lucasfilm.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it's not sounding good. Like even some of the outlets are kind of reporting a lot more about, you know, some of the initial comments regarding, or like, I don't know if you've heard all the negativity that's kind of come out, like, you know, a couple of days or even within the week of the release of Star Wars. But it hasn't been good. Like, you know, we reported earlier about how even John Boyega was saying how he felt like some of the creative choices were a bit iffy in The Last Jedi. And even JJ said that, he didn't think that the meta approach for Star Wars was a good way to tell the audience that, what they were watching didn't matter. And this is the reason why The Last Jedi kind of fell apart, right? And, even recently, JJ even said that nothing in quote, not quote, right, but he said that The Last Jedi, like, the stuff in the film, nothing was undoable. They couldn't kind of retcon stuff because they were just kind of hardline, like the way that Rian Johnson kind of filmed it. It was set in stone, and they can't just like go back and be like, "Oh, we were joking."
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream. Like they couldn't like fix any of that, and that's essentially what JJ said in regards to it. Like it just was quote rendered undoable. It's insane to see the state of Star Wars and how it's taking it.
Well, I have heard, just to skip in a little bit, I have heard the undoable part. I've heard with some of the critic reviews of it so far, the early reviews of the Rise of Skywalker, saying they try to retcon some stuff what was in The Last Jedi, but it doesn't work, and essentially it's two movies in one, where it's the middle saga and the third film, and it doesn't work, which, it's clearly kind of a dig, almost, of just like, yeah, The Last Jedi doesn't give it any room for anything to work. So you kind of have to, the middle film now has to be the third film, but instead of making it into 4 movies or doing something about it, they just made it one package that no one likes, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the case that Disney didn't want to invest like another film to clear up the shittiness of the film. Remember, this is what I actually said on a previous podcast. I don't know if you remember, but I said that they should make it into a third and fourth film and make it that Star Wars ends on episode 10 rather than episode 9. Because why do we do things in trilogies? Things don't have to be in trilogies unless we want them to be in trilogies, right? And yeah, like I think that's the kind of case with Star Wars as well. I'm not too surprised that you said, because even one of the editors even said that when they were making The Last Jedi, it quote presented a lot of challenges for the Rise of Skywalker. So this comes from Marianne Brandon, and yeah, like even people who are working on the previous movies, working on the current movies, are talking about the difficulties that The Last Jedi presented. And look, honestly, I think part of the reason why they're having these problems is because of fan backlash to these problems, right? If the fans said, hey, you know what, we like Rian Johnson's, changes, like realistically, like if the majority, like 90%, plus actually like the changes, they wouldn't be saying any of this. They would have said, oh, well, it was perfect, and we can roll with it. But the fact that, and this is the point, the fact that they have to kind of go and change these things and make these statements, do these kind of damage control statements to kind of separate themselves from The Last Jedi, just goes to show about what kind of odd place and awkward spot that the film has placed The Rise of Skywalker in.
And I feel like it's clearly they didn't have a plan, but that's kind of like the real problem, because it's like, obviously there's been rumors, and I think it's relatively true, that like George Lucas said he had a script for 7, 8, and 9, kind of like a good rough draft of things, like where the story should go, and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone at Disney and Lucasfilm were just like, yeah, we're not going to do that, we're going to do our own thing. So that was already number one. And then I think the whole second part of it is that obviously JJ clearly had an outline of where the characters were going to go. I felt, for example, like Finn was going to be a Skywalker at some point, not a Skywalker, but be a Jedi at some point, and maybe versus Rey at some, because there's a lot of ambiguity and mystery of like who she is, but on top of that, of Finn's kind of thing. So I felt like there was going to be 2 and 1. and they kind of did nothing about that. So I felt like, and obviously there's stuff like I don't know, the Knights of Ren. Why does Maz Kanata have the freaking, why is she important? Why does she have the lightsaber? All these little small nitty gritty details has literally just been set up, and instead of having an outline like what George did for the original trilogy, they were just like, oh yeah, it's gonna pass off to the next director and next director who don't have a vision, and they're just like, well, we're gonna do it this way, and kind of, and in the sense you can kind of blame in that direction kind of what J.J. Abrams has done, purely because he kind of did the same thing with all these shows like Lost and everything, where it's kind of like, I'm gonna set up something, and then it's up to you to fill in the blanks. And that's kind of what happened with Lost, where it's like, I'm gonna give you an initial premise that can lead anywhere, and then Damon Lindelof, you're gonna do your own style of what you want where it to go, and that's kind of what happens. And I feel like that's what happened to Star Wars, where essentially no one told Rian Johnson no, because they're just like, oh well, this is the way it's gonna go, and it's the director's choice on this one. And then JJ came back and it's just like, oh shit, I've never actually like gone like try to follow up someone else's decisions. And I feel like that's more of a harder choice to do.
Well, look, the problem is the fact that they didn't have one person uniting Star Wars under a unified vision. Like Kathleen Kennedy wasn't doing it. They didn't have their own kind of Kevin Feige doing it. So the best option would have been having one director direct all three movies, right? Like much like how the Russo brothers are directing or were directing the Avengers movies. Like it wasn't like they were making Infinity War and then had some other director make Endgame. They had those same directors kind of back to back make those films, and it has some kind of a logical consistency, a good flow to it. We aren't getting that with these films. I mean, the thing that I'm seeing is a lot of backpedaling in attacking like Star Wars fans as well, right? Like, we had Kathleen Kennedy also say that, oh well, the fans helped revive the Clone Wars series. If it wasn't for the fans, that show wouldn't have come back. Fans are important. We love our fans. And meanwhile, JJ saying the same thing, right? He said in an interview recently that you can't look at the fans of Star Wars as an adversary. They're passionate and certainly can be contentious, but the fact that they care, and I feel like as a Star Wars fan, understand that love for the series. So I feel blessed to be involved in something that matters so much to so many people. However, back in 2018, when I think like The Last Jedi, I believe, came out around about that.
It was yeah.
And he said this in an interview. He said Star Wars is a big galaxy, and you can find almost anything you want in Star Wars. If you are someone who feels threatened by women and need to lash out against them, you can probably find an enemy in Star Wars. You can probably look to the first movie George did and say that Leia was too outspoken or she was too tough. Anyone who wants to find a problem with anything can find a problem. The internet seems to be made for that. So again, there seems to be a double standard and a change in narrative now that, back then when The Last Jedi came out, people were criticizing the film because it was bad. Obviously I've mentioned before, Rey is a Mary Sue, but that isn't attacking, obviously, all women, quote unquote. But this is the kind of black mark that they want to put on any kind of critic of the film back then. But now that they are thinking, well, shit, nobody's going to fucking watch our movie because it's really shit. Oh, well, we love our fans now, and fans aren't our adversaries. They're kind of taking, a different approach now that they're seeing that they kind of need, quote unquote, these fans to go watch these films, because otherwise it's not going to make those $1 billion, and China won't be able to save them, because China didn't like The Last Jedi at all, I don't think.
Yeah, and that was going to be their proud saviors, Not only that, but it's like the type of audience they generally pander to, and it's like, and that's the thing. What it really comes down to is like, yeah, I agree that Mary Sue, Rey is a Mary Sue. It's not, and that's the thing. It's not an attack on females. The problem is that these writers are just like, we can't show females in a negative light in films because, you know, we just can't do it for some reason. So then they make them these people who don't have any.
One-dimensional.
They make them very one-dimensional, which don't make them any good characters at all, and we don't care about them. You know, the funny thing is,
they don't become sympathetic characters.
Yeah, they don't become sympathetic. They don't have. Essentially, the whole point is you want adversity. You want these characters to struggle through something. You need a goal. You need a premise, and you need like some sort of time frame. And it does not set up any of that whatsoever. And I think that's kind of the main problem. It's like the funny thing is, like, Kylo has a better arc of his character and who he is more than any other characters of this new movie, of all these new movies. And he's a white dude. It's because he can have the arc of him being pissed off about the Jedi because Luke tried to kill him, and be kind of like shadowed by his dad who forces him in a particular way. And kind of, I've heard in Rise of Skywalker he has a change of hearts at certain parts. So it's kind of like, he has a full arc of things, and it's kind of it kind of goes back to why I feel like Man of Steel is a good movie. And I know there's just kind of really randomly related, but the whole thing is, you need the whole point. Superman is a very hard character to write for, just because he's kind of like perfect in nearly every single way. So it's hard to give him a challenge of him being, you know, having something to relate to. Hence why in the new movies he has that. The whole thing with his dad being like, maybe you shouldn't. This conflict of like, who are you as the thing? Are you human? Or are you an alien? What are you doing with your powers? And I feel like that was a really good direction to go to Superman, instead of just being always happy, always being positive, and have nothing in his way. And it even happened in the comics, where originally, you know, it was a big thing. Superman was the biggest thing, the 30s all the way onto like the 60s, and then he became too powerful. And nothing could stand after Superman. And then that's when they kind of really they really started to invent new different types of kryptonite. That's when they started, I think, attacking him with like, oh yeah, magic. He's weak to magic, and now he has to harness also the sun. You know, basically he has to be able to target the sun to get his powers. And I think that kind of changed the game plan for Superman. So I feel like when it comes to Rey, we have not seen her lose once. We don't know her negatives. We don't know any of her flaws. She doesn't have any. So I feel like in the end, we don't get anything of these characters, and it all based around these characters, and it just feels it's just lazy writing, basically.
Maybe, you know, it's like kind of the classic job interview question, right? Like, you know, what would you say are your flaws? And maybe her flaws is that she doesn't have any flaws. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, I mean, look, it's just poorly written characters that don't manifest in something that people care about. And you also have like the media kind of running defense for him these like the past couple of years, really, because since The Force Awakens, because these criticisms like kind of exist. Like, I didn't like The Force Awakens. I think I was literally one of the few people that didn't like The Force Awakens. It just felt like Episode 4 to me. But you know, I can understand why people did, because you know, it basically emulated or Star Wars. But then with The Last Jedi, it kind of showed, hey, like, you know, this is literally a bad film, and people are waking up to it. But you know, you also have the media running defense, like, you know, saying like, oh well, you know, this is the reason. Like, look, I have some headings here that I'll read out for you. J.J. Abrams says he has a script for Episode 9. Here's why that's a good thing. Kill Your Parents, why it's a good thing George Lucas was kept away from the new Star Wars films. The Han Solo movie is undergoing more reshoots, but that's not as bad as it sounds. Like, this is the kind of thing that's
like Damage Control 101, all of this stuff. It's like, the direction that we're choosing, it's not that bad, and let me tell you why it's not bad.
The Last Jedi has no respect for nostalgia, and that's a good thing. Harrison Ford did not intend the solo premiere, and that's a good thing. Star Wars The Force Awakens not screening for critics might be a good thing. Like, this is what I'm saying.
The crazy part of it is, if it was any other franchise, like even if it's just a Marvel film, or Marvel films, like if it was a new Avengers film, none of this would be like this. This would be, no one would say, and that's a good thing. Like everyone's just like,
Well, look,
they're getting rid of all these, and that's a good thing. Like they haven't done it.
no, you know what? I disagree. I think they will because
Well, now
these
they possibly will. It's like now they're distancing themselves from the Infinity Saga,
it
and
doesn't
that's a
it
good
doesn't
thing.
matter. It doesn't matter. Anything these marketing anything these mega corporations do will always be considered a good thing from the media because they need the media for press action. They need these big companies for press access, right? They need them in order to kind of fuel business within there's your BuzzFeeds, your Vices, your Voxes, right? Like you need these companies, so they're never going to say their decision making is bad unless they can make a quick buck out of it. IndieWire did an interview with Ryan Johnson, and he basically said the following: I think approaching any creative process with the intention, this is in regards to making the Star Wars movie, would be a mistake that would lead to probably the exact opposite result. Even in my experience as a fan, if if I'm coming into something, even if it's something that I think I want, if I see exactly what I think I want on the screen, it's like, oh, okay. It'll make me smile. It'll make me feel neutral about that thing, and I won't feel anything about it afterward. But it's not really going to satisfy. Uh, Essentially, like this is the thing. He says, and I quote, "I want to be challenged as a fan," and this is the fundamental problem because I've heard a very similar thing about like his kind of movies, like even Knives Out, is kind of centered around challenging expectations of a typical crime drama. I guess like a whodunit film, right? And so therefore, if you're going to subvert that genre, that's fine because nobody fucking knows what Knives Out is until it came out, right? But with something like Star Wars, there's an expectation. But it's very interesting to see that even he's still kind of doubling down on I made a shitty movie and this is the justification as to why I made it.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's like the original plan was the spin-offs were supposed to be the ones that do interesting things with the Star Wars universe, not the core. Like the core, you want to keep the same type of thing. Like you want to do something, like kind of like what do you call it, relatable, and something that kind of follows the genre path. And that's what I thought they were gonna do, where they were just like, oh, and these spin-off films are gonna be the ones that like, we're gonna do interesting stuff. Like we're gonna make like a hard freaking Star Wars film where there's blood everywhere when people cut stuff with lightsabers, something like that. Not do it in a mainland in the middle of a story type movie, and I feel like that's where the problem began, where it's kind of like it's you're subverting the genre, but the fans didn't want that in their mainline story. Like we're fine with that. Just do it in a Star Wars story that has no relation to any Skywalkers whatsoever. And I feel like that's the main thing. They just changed the narrative. If it was literally just about like if the Mandalorian turned into a series of movies, and Ryan Johnson was directing and he was subverting the expectation of the Mandalorian characters, and doing it that particular way, I think people would be more or less more fine with it with what happened with The Last Jedi, because then it could be like maybe the Mandalorians are neutral people type of thing, and it's like the expectation was you had these characters who are already well known, already in canon, and basically you just changed their structure and how they were just for the sake of doing it.
But here's the problem: like most of the new Star Wars was new, right? Like you have some legacy characters here and there, but a lot of it, yeah, like while a lot of the assets were old, the story itself was new, and they didn't do anything interesting with it either. I don't think Ryan Johnson can be trusted with anything that has any kind of established lore component of it, including the Mandalorian. So he if he had his hands on the Mandalorian, he would probably retroactively retcon a lot of the kind of established things that that happened on Mandalore, right?
It's like where did they establish the armor? Well, I just told you a different way why they established it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like he's like a comic book writer who forgets that other comic book writers had established certain things, and he's like, oh yeah, well, deal with it now. It's one of those kind of lazy, kind of directing gig people. But I mean, again, he apparently is good within other genres, because apparently Knives Out is good. I'm kind of holding out on watching it. I mean, apparently it's good. I might watch it. Who knows? But there was a good article from the Motley Fool, who kind of go through like analytics of like stock markets and stuff like that, and even they're saying that has Star Wars been a poor investment for the Disney franchise and stuff, right? The fact that they didn't have any kind of plan for what was going on with the three movies of the trilogies as a whole.
Well, not only that, but it's like merchandising is pretty down, and it's
exactly.
down. It's down and bad. The parks, the Disneyland parks, like originally,
correct,
when they first announced the Star Wars land, I was really excited, and then closer to coming to the date, they basically rushed it, and it's literally just nothing. And it's like it's one of the biggest blunders and mistakes that I've seen. And like that's the thing. I've studied a lot of Disney stuff where, like, for example, like when they opened up originally in Paris, Disneyland Paris used to be called Euro Disney, and it literally made its first actual profit about probably 6 years ago. Because they had to do so much developments with the park, and it's probably the worst Disney park out there because they didn't do planning. And I feel like that even with the Star Wars stuff in the Disneyland and Disney World parks, it could be something that they have to remake and rebuild until like the next 2 or 3 years to actually do something interesting about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, like you said, like with something like Galaxy's Edge, which is the park, apparently the sales, they opened it early, despite it not having much to offer, like not many rides and things like that. They've changed like the pricing for it.
They even had a whole thing
also,
where the plan was like to have it more of an immersive world, like as in because I follow these Disneyland people and they talk about it, where it's like the original intent and plan, and there was a test run where there was going to be actors, so it looked like you were living in kind of a Star Wars land, and there was going to be actors kind of around the cast, like acting like like their cast members, and they're talking about join the resistance, and you had to play around with the script, and it's like you're in a living world, and and essentially the whole thing is like one cast member it's kind of like an NPC in a game, like in Oblivion, where it's like if you literally follow that one person throughout the park, they're doing stuff that would contribute to the story. They were literally trying to make it Westworld, and they completely ditched it. I'm assuming because it probably costs way too much money to actually get actors consistently doing this all the time, and Disney is well known for paying like their park staff literally really cheap minimum wage.
That makes sense.
So I'm assuming they had to cut that off, but I'm like, that seems so much interesting and so much better, because I'd be cool. I'd be literally going there every few days to be like, I want to see. Yeah, if I lived there, I'd be like, I want to see what this cast member is gonna do today, and literally follow that cast member. I feel like that's way more interesting. But now it's like this slimmed down version of just like it has Star Wars stuff,
Yeah, I mean, look, having like a Westworld experience does sound very fun, but yeah, you need to pay people a lot of money to kind of, like you have to pay the actors to kind of do a really good job at consistently doing that, and therefore, who has to pay that price? It's going to be the people coming into the park, right? So the price is for. So I mean, yeah, it'd be cool. Like I wouldn't mind. That does sound like a much better concept, but obviously they're not doing it. I think the other problem is the fact that they set up Galaxy's Edge in the context of the sequel trilogy and not the original trilogy. I think that was also a really big mistake. It should have been set during the original trilogy, and you could have had actors playing like Luke, Han, and Leia, and have whereas like, oh, they're gonna have somebody be Rey. Yeah, sick. Like anybody gives a shit about any of the new characters. You know what? There's several of them are probably gonna die. This series, because a lot of them aren't returning. And look,
I think they just don't want to go as well, because I think John Boyega seems the most rebellious one out of all of them. I feel like his contract's pretty much nearly over, and he's just like, I don't give a shit anymore. It's screw the NDAs. But I feel like a lot of people in this movie, it's gonna be one of those things like when the dust settles in the next like year or two, whatever it may be, 5 years, there's gonna be some sort of tell-all where it's like it was really bad on set, yada yada, or like I want to know these things, and it's one of those things you won't hear until later. Like we just had the news when they first bought Disney from Bob Iger, and Bob Iger's kind of like, yeah, we threw away George Lucas's ideas. Like we just found that out now,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so
Only
I'm
like a
very
couple of
curious
weeks.
of what everyone else is saying about this, where it's like, where someone at Lucasfilm's like, yeah, we didn't have a plan, like at all, and we had to work many hours to redo all this stuff, and I especially want to know what happened with Solo, where it's like they had Lord and Miller, they had the movie like I think 80% done, and then they're just like, yep, completely change it, and then in the hands of something like Kathleen Kennedy, you would think that you'd be like, you would obviously stop it if you didn't agree with it. If it's 70% done, you'd be like 20-30% done, even 40%, and be like, okay, that's not what I want. But it's like the whole movie was basically done at that point. So there's a lot of mismanagement in Lucasfilm, and it's basically, I want to know what happened in this like 5-year time span.
Look, honestly, it's what happens when you have people who don't care about the stuff that they're making headline it. Because I don't think Kathleen Kennedy cares about Star Wars, and that's why she let JJ do whatever he wanted with Force Awakens, and let Ryan Johnson do whatever he wanted, and let whoever the fuck did. Is it the Duffer brothers?
No, it was Chris Lord and Phil Miller, the
Okay.
Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse people.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let them do whatever they wanted with it. There was no oversight, no collective vision, zero kind of foresight into what it would mean going forward. They just thought that it's a Star Wars movie, it'll print money. They treated it like like a Marvel film, but with none of the Marvel quality behind it. As of this recording, the critic review for The Rise of Skywalker is on a 58 on the tomato meter, so it's technically rotten. But there's going to be, I think, a lot of the, I guess, embargoes will be coming off more so. There's going to be a lot of audience scores. It's probably going to be negative initially, so that's not going to be too much of a surprise. But you're also probably going to have a lot of people give a more honest review. Now there is a chance that, hey, like maybe the fans of Skywalker might like this film, but I think that because of the effect of The Last Jedi and what JJ had to do to try and fix this film is going to result in neither the fans or the critics liking it. A lot of the reviews have been saying, oh well, yeah, if you like Star Wars and you like being pandered to, then you'll like this film, right? Like, it's basically like a passive aggressive jab at the fan base. Like, we would like this film, where
it's like you'll like this film because you didn't like the intriguing Last Jedi because it did something interesting to the genre.
Yeah, that's essentially
because then at that point, then like literally all the Marvel films, pretty much like all 26 of them, at some point like have done the same thing over and over again. So it's like the argument doesn't the argument doesn't hold any water. It just seems to be for certain Star Wars things. I don't know. It's always Star Wars, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing. The main point of kind of saying stuff like that is, is trying to distance themselves, to say, hey, we didn't like this film. So anyone who's kind of who's just like rolling through Rotten Tomatoes, like I'm usually like that. I'm just looking at the tomato scores and then I'm fucking leaving. Like, I don't give a shit about what anybody has to say. I just want to see what the collective consensus is. But to anybody who's just kind of drive-bying it, okay, cool, these people gave it a negative and they go away. Like, they kind of save their ass because, I gave it a negative score and not a positive score. But then they make these comments to kind of delineate themselves from the quote-unquote toxic fan base or whatever you want to call it, and be like, oh, well, if you're a fan, you'll like this. But, like, it's not a good film. I don't think that it's going to get... there are some cases where, some films are negatively received by, critics, but the audience really like it. I don't think it's going to be that kind of situation for this film. I think it's going to be... I don't know if it'll... I think the audience score will be below the critic score. I think that's...
Yeah, I still think the audience is still going to hate this movie in comparison, but like... Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, from what as I mentioned, what they say, they're trying to cram too much into too many movies, um, and I feel like there's a lot of things not explained, and like obviously we talked about the leaks earlier this year, and yeah, they're all true. Uh, the general plot points of where this movie goes, the kind of MacGuffins to MacGuffins that they're going to be
Yeah, I've heard
following.
it's been described like a video game, like as if you're like play like you're watching somebody play a video game. Like, oh, we have to get this thing. Oh, and then we have to get this thing,
So
and
then
then
we're gonna
you're
show you
traveling.
all these different locations. We got the desert planet, we got the forest planet, we got the indoor planet. You know, we've got all these
Mhm.
random locations. So you know, the ice water level and the water, you know, that type of stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, exactly,
and
exactly,
and it's just
100%.
the sake of just showing new stuff for the sake of showing new stuff, but it doesn't do anything interesting with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of one of the problems with it. And yeah, I think overall, like obviously we're gonna see this movie and talk about it, and it's funny how we've never actually reviewed the Last Jedi, just because like everyone just knows like we're on this camp, and I feel like more and more people, especially in the past 6 months, because I think it's probably been a lot more acceptable to hate on the Last Jedi now since this movie has come out, and since everyone kind of in Lucasfilms kind of give it the semi okay like underneath like to kind of hate that movie. But yeah, I feel like this movie is just gonna be just it's just gonna be an embarrassing mess. And after this, we don't know where Star Wars is going movie wise. And what I think they're gonna do is just stay away from all of this stuff, stay away from it from a bit, and they're just gonna be like, yep, we're gonna set something before Episode 1, so then we can establish something new and different. I feel like that's what they'll probably do.
Personally, I think they should just set it like 1,000 years or like 100 years in the Star Wars future, right? Like so that none of this kind of it's several generations ahead, and there might be some references to the old film, but nobody from the old films are around. There isn't any of the legacy stuff. There's no R2s. There's no BB-8. There's none of that kind of bullshit, right? It's all kind of new, and they have to go from there. I think that's probably the better direction to go in if they want to kind of have their cake and eat it too, and then you just have Filoni and Feige figure out like how to do the story going forward. But we'll see whether or not what they do.
Because in that sense, if you set it like 1,000 years in the future, they can almost kind of be like, we can retcon 7, 8, 9 in a way of like, you can be like, oh yeah, Rey's the most magical person ever, and she fixes everything in the past like all these films, and then now everyone's getting pissed off because of that. So now you can be like, oh well, the peace lasted for how many years, but evil always comes back, and have this different type of thing, and it might not be, you know, a clear cut answer of sorts, but it's like certain things happened between them, and it's like, as we were talking about before, you know, like something like Game of Thrones type of thing, where it's like you can set it way further out, so then you don't have to kind of reference that stuff. And I feel like, and even then, the Star Wars universe is really massive. And I think like obviously one of the criticisms of the prequels is just it made it feel everything small because everyone's interconnected and related. They don't have to go through the whole route of like the chosen one and all that type of stuff. They can really do something different and unique. That's why, you know, for example, like the Mandalorian, I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad that it's doing something different with the Star Wars, and that's it's actually a good Star Wars property that we haven't gotten since basically the prequels. So yeah, I just think overall Star Wars, it just needs a better direction, and I feel like obviously they're bringing in Kevin Feige apparently, and there's gonna be I think a massive shakeup after this film. So in the next few months, we're probably gonna hear some news and things going with this movie, because I'm assuming it really all depends. First of all, we're gonna get the reviews, we're gonna get the reasons why, and then we're gonna get the box office whole type of thing, and then after that we'll get the whole stories of what's happening with Lucasfilm, and I feel like that's the trajectory of where they're gonna go with this.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. But I guess till then we have to kind of sit tight. I guess like as I mentioned, like we're reluctantly gonna go watch this film, um, and yeah, hopefully we'll give a proper review for it next week. I guess. And to be honest, I need to actually catch up because The Expanse came out,
Yeah, I'm more
which is
excited to see The Expanse. I've seen one episode so
yeah,
far, and I'm like, this is some good stuff. And even then, Witcher basically comes out tomorrow. as well. So
Oh yeah,
there's
that's
there's a
true.
lot of things. Rick and Morty had its final episode come out
Oh
for
yeah,
half the
Rick and Morty
season as
was
well.
really good. Watchmen also had its final episode come out, and also Doomsday Clock also came out as well. So I think we'll have like a lot to talk about for next week in terms of shows and reviews.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. But yeah, until next time, really. Remember, you can always listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and we stream live on YouTube in our channel Marketing Movies. Just type in Pancake Parlay and you'll find us. So until next time, maybe Henry Cavill is going to be in a Star Wars movie in the future. Who knows? But until next time, see ya.